Hi, my name is Mark Smith and I'm with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and I'm going to be speaking about codependency on this video. Codependency is the common cold of mental health issues. It's very prevalent. Some say as many as 80% of women suffer from codependency, and maybe as high as 40% of men. Women in our culture tend to be trained to be more codependent, to be more conforming and pleasing. It's the most common condition that we deal with here at Family Tree Counseling Associates. Codependency, let me define it for you. 4 characteristics. The first one is being insecure, lacking a sense of self, low self-esteem, sort of a follower looking for a leader. The second thing is they tend to be dependent financially at times. In the beginning of a relationship, they tend to be emotionally dependent. The third quality is that they're just way too other-centered. The first thought that comes into their mind is, what about the kids? What about my husband? Rarely does it come into their mind, hey, what about me? They tend to be rescuers. Sometimes they rescue puppies, siblings, friends, men. They don't consider their own needs or value their own needs nearly enough. And then the fourth characteristic, of course, is they're just too passive. They don't have the ability to assert themselves in situations where they need to have a voice and be powerful. One of the things I say about codependency is codependents are usually in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people for the wrong reasons. If you're keenly in touch with who you are and what your gut is telling you, I believe there's almost always a right place at the right time with the right people for the right reasons. Codependent people, whether it's male or female, they tend to marry counterdependents. And a counterdependent is it's sort of like the polar opposite of a codependent. Rather than being insecure, they're grandiose or arrogant or know-it-all, very confident. You can't move them off of their position. They know they're right. You know who I'm talking about. They have big dreams. They tend to be able to cast vision, get people to follow them. Even if they're going completely in the wrong direction, they can still get people to follow them. The second thing about a counterdependent is they're highly independent. They're not accountable. They sort of do what they want to do when they want to do it. Not in touch with their emotional needs. When it's a man, a lot of male counterdependents, all their emotional needs are funneled to sexuality. So with one of my clients, I say, as long as they're getting laid and paid, then they're happy. The third thing about a counterdependent is they're oblivious. They're in their own little world. It's their world. You're just living in it. They are self-absorbed and they are addictive. Usually work is high on the list. Sometimes alcohol, sometimes sex, but almost always work. And the last thing is they have high control needs. They're controlling. So the passive, dependent, other-centered, low self-esteem, codependent, marries the arrogant, grandiose, highly independent, but sexually needy and intrusive, oblivious, self-centered, addictive, controlling, counterdependent. So the recovery process for a codependent is all about having a voice and developing a sense of self. One of my clients, a woman who was codependent, she experienced therapy for her, couples therapy. It felt like there was a microphone on her end of the couch, And there wasn't, but it felt like there was, and a whole big bank of intense speakers along the wall. And we'll call her husband's name Dave here. She would come in and reach out and say, "Welcome, Dave, to your session. There are some things I want to talk with you about." And old Dave was just, I can take this off. Dave was just listening, and developing the ability to hear and take in. So it's all about gaining power, gaining a voice, being able to influence. Another analogy that I give is blowing up a mountain. Every spring break, I would bring my family to Myrtle Beach, and we would drive, and we would get to North Carolina, and then there would be tunnels through the mountains, and those tunnels are built by engineers, and the main tool that they use is dynamite. They just need about 4 lanes, about 30 foot high. They don't want to blow the whole mountain up, so they were skilled as engineers to know where to place the dynamite and how much dynamite to use. Well, in this analogy, the counter-dependent is the mountain. They're hard to get through, they're hard to move. And the codependent is the engineer you want to get through, and the dynamite is your anger. So codependents have barely enough anger to blow up a few Coke bottles. Maybe there's an occasional fireworks display, but they lack the personal impact to be able to make a dent in their counter-dependent husbands. So the recovery process for a codependent is developing a sense of self, getting fire in their bellies, knowing that they're not a victim, however. There's no bad guys, and the counter-dependent is bad because he's control. No, you recruited the guy. There are no bad guys. There are no victims. It's about, the analogy we use is the movie Braveheart. I had a picture of a woman with like Braveheart painted on her face, and that's sort of what recovery is about for a codependent is they paint on the Braveheart paint. They go to war over power so they can be heard and make an impact on their counter-dependent. So it's about having fire in your belly and having conviction and being heard by the counter-dependent. Much of the therapy is couples work or individual work, but much of it is done in group therapy, where I get a group of codependents together, men and women, and we discuss boundary setting, wounds in childhood, because codependents aren't made in a marriage, they're made in a childhood. They grow up in homes where they didn't have enough power. There was somebody who was controlling or critical or abandoning or raging. I don't come across codependents who grew up in a healthy home. It never happens. They grew up not having power, not being special enough, playing second fiddle or fifth fiddle or 10th fiddle to an addiction, and being abandoned emotionally and not being given the opportunity to really negotiate and have a voice. So we get them in group and they work on healing their childhood wounds, on setting boundaries, on not being a victim. Boundaries are understood ahead of time, and there are consequences. And you can share them very effectively and very pleasantly. But if you wait and don't have boundaries, then you're going to feel victimized, and then you're going to yell, scream, and rage at your particular counter-dependent. What is he going to do? He's going to get defensive and do exactly the opposite of what you want him to do. So what we try to do is empower codependents to have a sense of self and stick with their sense of self. I want to give an example of a woman's recovery. She came to us 3.5, 4 years ago. Her husband was an active alcoholic. Her kids were acting out. Her mother was critical and intrusive, and her boss was sort of a jerk. One day she woke up in her bedroom and she realized there was a gun safe, a big metal gray gun safe about the size of a refrigerator next to the bed. And she asked her, talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. She said, what the heck? That's not a very romantic thing. Why is it? So out goes the gun safe. Then she set boundaries with the husband. You need to quit drinking or you're out. He got treatment. Hasn't had a drop since. Worked hard in therapy. He worked hard in group therapy. She asserted herself with her kids and set boundaries. She had a little come to Jesus talk with her mother. She negotiated some things at work where she got a different boss and a different, better job. The gun safe went out of the room. The bedroom suite was remodeled. The home was remodeled and since sold, and now she has a beautiful new home. She reinvented herself, and she never raised her voice while doing it. Everybody around her was in therapy because she became a person who had a strong sense of self, strong boundaries, a strong voice. She knew who she wanted to be and where she wanted to be, and she could be pleasant and negotiate with everybody in her life, but it didn't pay to mess with her. Because if you messed with her, you're going to experience some painful consequences for yourself. So that's codependency. It's very common for men. We have a group here called the No More Mr. Nice Guy group, and it's for men who tend to pick controlling and critical, domineering women. Some of my guys in the group are that way. Some of them are more counter-dependent. It's a great group. But we have a book that men read called No More Mr. Nice Guy by a guy named Glover. And so it addresses male codependency. We have multiple groups here, like 8 or 9 groups on codependency, where people, and really just any issue from your childhood that you need to come in and heal and work on and get healthier. So that's codependency. If you sound like a codependent, if it sounds like you're married to a counter-dependent, you're going to need some help. You're going to need some therapy. Give us a call. We will set you up with a talented, effective therapist. We'll probably get you in group. We're probably going to have you read a book called Codependent No More by Melody Beatty, and we will help you to reinvent yourself and make your life what you deserve it to be and what you want it to be. Thank you very much.